Lisa Rodriguez stared at the mountain of overdue bills scattered across her kitchen table, each red final notice stamp feeling like a personal insult in the harsh Arizona morning light. 4 months had passed since her husband Mike's funeral, and the crushing weight of his cancer treatment bills threatened to bury her alive. Her military pension barely kept food on the table, let alone covered the mortgage on their modest ranch home outside Phoenix. The shrill ring of her phone cut through the oppressive silence like a lifeline. Rodriguez Aviation Solutions, she answered, forcing professionalism into her voice despite operating her one-woman repair business from her cramped garage. "We need emergency aircraft maintenance." The voice was sharp, impatient. "Hangar 12 at Phoenix Sky Harbor Executive. Can you be there within the hour?" Lisa glanced at her completely empty calendar, a painful reminder of how few clients trusted a female veteran mechanic. What type of aircraft? Private jet? Electrical failures? Our regular maintenance crew is unavailable? Something in the caller's hesitation suggested there was more to the story, but Lisa desperately needed the work. "I'll be there." As she loaded her well-worn toolbox into her aging pickup truck, Lisa caught her reflection in the side mirror. The woman staring back looked far older than her 38 years. The Arizona sun had weathered her face like leather, and grief had carved deep lines around her eyes. Her faded Air Force jacket from 3 tours in Iraq hung loose on her diminished frame, a constant reminder of better days when her skills were valued and respected. The drive to Phoenix Sky Harbor Executive felt like crossing into an alternate universe. Pristine hangars lined the tarmac like cathedrals, each housing aircraft, worth more than most people would earn in their lifetimes. Lisa's battered truck looked pitiful among the luxury vehicles in the parking lot, gleaming Porsches, Range Rovers, and Teslas that probably cost more than she'd make in the next 5 years combined. Hangar 12 stood before her like a monument to wealth and power. Inside, a magnificent Boeing business jet sat like a wounded giant, surrounded by a cluster of men in $1,000 suits. They looked up as Lisa entered, their expressions shifting from expectation to barely concealed disappointment. "You're the mechanic?" The question came from a tall man with silver hair and a watch that probably cost more than Lisa's annual income. His tone carried the kind of dismissal she'd heard too many times since leaving the service, the assumption that someone like her couldn't possibly solve problems that had stumped real engineers. "Lisa Rodriguez, yes, sir." She kept her voice steady and professional. "What seems to be the issue?" The man, his badge identified him as William Sterling, Director of Operations, gestured toward the jet with obvious frustration. "Intermittent electrical failures across multiple systems. Every diagnostic test shows green, but the moment we attempt takeoff, everything shuts down completely. We've had 4 different engineering teams examine her over the past 3 weeks." Lisa approached the aircraft, her experienced eyes taking in its sleek lines and sophisticated systems. Even grounded, the jet radiated an aura of power and luxury. That felt almost intimidating. "Mind if I take a look?" Sterling's laugh held no warmth. "Be my guest, though I'm not sure what you expect to find that engineers from MIT and Stanford missed." As Lisa began her methodical inspection, she felt the familiar weight of skeptical eyes boring into her back. The whispered conversations weren't quite quiet enough to miss. Scraping the bottom of the barrel. What's next? Hiring janitors. This is what desperation looks like. But as her hands moved over the aircraft's complex systems, something else took over: the patient, systematic approach that had kept military aircraft operational in the most hostile environments on Earth. In Baghdad, a grounded aircraft meant stranded troops or delayed medical evacuations. There was no room for ego or politics, only solutions that worked. Near the main electrical distribution panel, Lisa paused. Her fingertips detected something the expensive diagnostic equipment had completely missed. A subtle vibration, barely perceptible, that pulsed in an irregular pattern. She closed her eyes, listening to the aircraft's electrical heartbeat the way her old crew chief had taught her years ago. "I think I found something," she said quietly. The hangar fell silent. Sterling moved closer, his skepticism warring with desperate hope. "What is it?" Lisa knelt beside a small access panel, her weathered hands steady as she began removing the protective cover. "Sometimes the most sophisticated problems have simple solutions, sir. Sometimes you have to feel what the machine is trying to tell you." As the panel came free, revealing the complex maze of wiring beneath, Lisa's trained eye immediately spotted what no computer had detected: a hairline crack in a critical power distribution junction so microscopic it would only cause problems under specific flight conditions, the tiny flaw that would change everything. Chapter 2: David against Goliath. "That's impossible," Sterling's voice cracked as he stared at the microscopic fissure Lisa had exposed. "Our diagnostic systems would have detected that." Lisa gently probed the damaged junction with a precision tool. "Not necessarily. This type of microfracture only creates problems under dynamic load conditions. When the engines reach takeoff power, the vibration causes just enough movement to interrupt the electrical flow. Your diagnostics probably ran with engines at idle." A younger engineer in an immaculate lab coat scoffed from behind them. "Ma'am, I hold advanced degrees from MIT and Princeton. I've been doing this for 12 years. That tiny crack couldn't possibly ground every aircraft I maintained in Iraq," Lisa interrupted quietly, her voice carrying the weight of hard-earned experience. "I've seen it before." Sterling's face flushed crimson. The Boeing belonged to tech mogul Alexander Blackstone, whose patience had evaporated weeks ago. Every day the jet remained grounded cost hundreds of thousands in missed business opportunities. "And damaged reputation. You're telling me that a crack we can barely see has stumped our entire engineering team? Sometimes the obvious answer is the correct one." Lisa stood, wiping her hands on a well-used shop rag. "I can fabricate a temporary fix that'll get her airborne while you source a replacement junction. Should take about 3 hours." The hangar erupted in murmurs. The MIT engineer, his badge read Dr. Marcus Thompson, stepped forward with barely contained indignation. "Mr. Sterling, surely we're not going to entrust a $70 million aircraft to some improvised field repair by someone without proper civilian credentials." The words hit Lisa like a physical assault. Without proper credentials. After 12 years keeping multi-million-dollar military aircraft operational in active combat zones, after 3 tours where her expertise meant the difference between life and death for countless soldiers, she wasn't properly credentialed for civilian work. Sterling's expression shifted, uncertainty replacing desperation. "What kind of fix exactly?" "Reinforced bypass system with precision micro-soldering to circumvent the compromised junction," Lisa explained. "It's not permanent, but it'll hold until you can install the proper replacement. I've done it dozens of times." Dr. Thompson laughed coldly. "In some Iraqi desert on aging military transports, perhaps. This is precision commercial aviation engineering, not battlefield repairs with improvised materials." Lisa felt her jaw tighten. The casual dismissal of her military service, the assumption that combat aviation was somehow less sophisticated than civilian aircraft, burned in her chest like acid. But she'd learned long ago that arguing rarely changed closed minds. Results did. "Your choice," she said simply. But that jet isn't going anywhere until someone addresses that junction failure. Sterling looked between Lisa and Dr. Thompson, the weight of his decision obvious. In the corner, Lisa noticed a younger technician watching the exchange with keen interest. His name tag read Danny Martinez, and something in his expression suggested he wasn't entirely convinced by Thompson's dismissive attitude. "How long did you estimate?" Sterling asked, his voice barely above a whisper. 3 hours, maybe 4. Lisa met his gaze steadily. "And I guarantee it'll work." Dr. Thompson moved closer to Sterling, his voice low, but not quite quiet enough to be private. "If she causes any damage, if there's any kind of incident, the liability implications alone could—" "I'll take full responsibility," Lisa interrupted. "Put it in writing if necessary. Any damage caused by my repair work, I'll cover personally." It was a massive gamble. Lisa's entire net worth wouldn't cover the cost of a minor scratch on the Boeing, let alone serious damage. But she'd diagnosed the problem correctly. She was absolutely certain of it. The same instincts that had kept her alive in combat zones weren't going to fail her now. Sterling stared at her for a long moment, weighing risks against the mounting pressure from above. Outside, she could hear the rumble of other aircraft departing, the sound of business continuing, while his remained frustratingly grounded. Finally, he nodded. "Do it. But I'm holding you to that guarantee." As Lisa began setting up her precision equipment, she caught Dr. Thompson making urgent phone calls. Something about liability concerns and unqualified personnel. The younger technician, Danny, approached hesitantly. "Need any assistance?" he asked quietly. "I was Navy before this. Fighter jet maintenance." Lisa smiled genuinely for the first time in weeks. Maybe she wasn't completely alone after all. Chapter 3. The Moment of Truth. 3 hours later, Lisa stepped back from the Boeing, sweat beading on her forehead despite the hangar's climate control system. Her improvised bypass repair gleamed under the industrial lights, a carefully engineered solution that bridged the damaged component with military precision and civilian sophistication. "Fire her up," she told Sterling, who stood nearby with a tablet displaying the jet's comprehensive diagnostic systems. The engines spooled to life with a deep, thunderous roar that reverberated through the hangar like controlled lightning. Lisa watched the instrument panels like a hawk, every gauge and warning indicator under intense scrutiny. Green lights across the board. The electrical systems remained rock steady as power increased through the full range. "Well, I'll be damned," Danny muttered, grinning as he monitored the complex readings on his own device. But Dr. Thompson wasn't finished fighting. As the engines wound down after the successful test, he approached Sterling with a thick folder of official-looking paperwork. "I've been reviewing our insurance policies and FAA regulations thoroughly. This repair," he gestured dismissively, "at Lisa's expertly crafted work, violates at least 8 federal aviation standards. If anything happens to this aircraft, we're looking at criminal liability, not just civil penalties." Lisa felt the familiar knot forming in her stomach. She'd witnessed this strategy before, the sudden discovery of regulations that somehow only applied when inconvenient people succeeded where the right people had failed spectacularly. "Which regulation specifically?" she asked, calmly. Thompson flipped through pages with theatrical precision, clearly enjoying his moment. Part 145 Repair Station Requirements, Part 43 Maintenance Standards, Part 65 Mechanic Certification Protocols. Shall I continue? This aircraft cannot legally fly with unauthorized modifications performed by unlicensed civilian personnel. Sterling's face went pale. "But the repair works perfectly." You saw the comprehensive diagnostics. Completely irrelevant, Thompson snapped, with obvious satisfaction. Federal law is federal law. I've already contacted our legal department. They're strongly recommending we remove the unauthorized repair immediately and pursue a certified solution through proper channels. Lisa stared at the paperwork Thompson wielded like a weapon. 12 years of keeping combat aircraft operational in active war zones, and now she was unauthorized to touch a civilian jet. The bitter irony wasn't lost on her. She'd been certified to maintain aircraft that carried weapons of war into hostile territory, but not luxury transports for billionaires conducting business deals. How long will that process take? Sterling asked with obvious dread. Minimum 2 weeks, possibly 3. We'll need to source the proper junction assembly and have it installed by fully certified technicians following all appropriate regulatory protocols. 3 weeks? Sterling's voice cracked with desperation. Mr. Blackstone has critical meetings in London tomorrow morning. He's already postponed twice because of this ongoing situation. Thompson shrugged with practiced indifference. Better than facing federal prosecution for operating an aircraft with illegal modifications performed by unqualified personnel. Lisa watched the exchange with growing anger. Not at Sterling. He was trapped between regulatory requirements and business pressure. Not even at the regulations themselves, which existed for legitimate safety reasons. Her anger was reserved for Thompson and his weaponized bureaucracy, his cynical use of rules as clubs to beat down anyone who didn't fit his narrow definition of qualified. "There's another option," she said quietly. Both men turned toward her. Thompson's expression was triumphant, clearly expecting her to surrender. Sterling looked desperate, grasping for any possible solution. "I can get certified, tonight if absolutely necessary. I have military equivalencies for most civilian ratings. Never bothered with the paperwork, because nobody would hire me anyway." Thompson's smirk faltered noticeably. "The testing centers are closed until Monday. Earliest appointment would be—" "Emergency certification review," Lisa interrupted confidently. "FAA district office handles them around the clock for critical situations. I know because I've researched it before for contract work." She was partially bluffing. The emergency review process definitely existed, but she'd never actually used it. Still, something in her tone made Thompson hesitate uncertainly. "Even if that were somehow possible," he said slowly, "the review process typically takes several days, not hours." "Not for military conversions with active security clearances," Lisa replied, her confidence growing as she remembered details from conversations with other veteran mechanics. "Expedited review for personnel with documented combat aviation experience, especially when there's demonstrated economic justification." Sterling's eyes lit up with renewed hope. "How long realistically? If I leave now, drive to the FAA office. Downtown, and they have someone available for emergency review. Maybe 8 hours, maybe 12, if they're severely backlogged." Thompson's face flushed crimson. "This is absolutely ridiculous. We don't even know if her improvised repair is structurally sound long-term. We're talking about risking a $70 million aircraft on the word of someone who fixed what your 4 engineering teams couldn't," Danny interrupted, speaking up decisively for the first time. "Maybe we should actually listen to her expertise." The hangar fell completely silent. Lisa could hear her own heartbeat as Sterling weighed his limited options. Behind them, the Boeing sat ready to fly, her repair holding steady, engines proven, operational. All that stood between success and another 3 weeks of costly delays was paperwork and prejudice. "Do it," Sterling said finally, with grim determination. "Get certified. We'll secure the aircraft until you return." But as Lisa headed toward her truck, she caught sight of Thompson making another urgent phone call. his voice too low to make out specific words, but his expression making his hostile intentions crystal clear. Whatever he was planning, Lisa suspected. Her certification run was about to become significantly more complicated than anticipated. Chapter 4. Fighting Back Smart. The FAA district office in downtown Phoenix buzzed with late-night activity as Lisa sat across from examiner Margaret Stevens, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who'd been reviewing aviation certifications since before Lisa had enlisted. The emergency review had been approved barely after Lisa had convinced them that keeping a critical corporate aircraft grounded posed significant economic hardship to multiple parties. "Your military record is exceptionally impressive," Stevens said, methodically reviewing Lisa's comprehensive service jacket. 3 combat tours, multiple commendations for maintaining aircraft readiness under hostile conditions, supervisory experience managing complex operations. "Why haven't you pursued civilian certification before now?" Lisa chose her words carefully. "Honestly, I never believed anyone would take me seriously. Most corporate aviation positions require college degrees I don't have, professional connections I lack. Seemed like a waste of time and money I couldn't afford to lose." Stevens nodded thoughtfully. She'd witnessed too many qualified veterans struggle with the civilian transition, watched talented people fall through cracks created by credentialism and institutional bias. "Well, your technical knowledge base is absolutely solid. I'm approving. Emergency A&P certification with inspection authorization. You'll need to complete the full documentation within 90 days, but this will make you completely legal to work." As Lisa drove back toward Phoenix Sky Harbor, her temporary certification papers on the passenger seat felt like a small but significant victory. But her phone had been buzzing incessantly with missed calls and urgent text messages. Something major was happening at the hangar. She arrived to find the parking lot unusually crowded for well past midnight. Inside Hangar 12, a substantial crowd had gathered around the Boeing. Sterling stood off to one side, his expression grimly determined, while Dr. Thompson held court near the aircraft with several men in expensive suits who radiated power and authority. "Completely unauthorized modification," Thompson was explaining as Lisa approached the group. "I've thoroughly documented multiple safety violations, and our insurance carrier has been formally notified of the potential liability exposure we're facing." Lisa recognized one of the suited men from business magazine covers, Alexander Blackstone himself, the jet's owner. His presence explained the crowd and the tension. Word had apparently gotten out that his aircraft remained grounded, and he'd come personally to assess the situation. "Mr. Sterling," Lisa called out, holding up her certification papers. FAA emergency approval came through successfully. The hangar fell completely silent. Thompson's face went pale as he realized his regulatory roadblock had just crumbled spectacularly. Blackstone turned toward Lisa with sharp, calculating eyes that missed nothing. "You're the mechanic who identified the problem?" His voice carried the crisp authority of someone accustomed to immediate obedience and results. "Yes, sir. And now I'm the fully certified mechanic who identified and repaired the problem." Lisa handed her papers to Sterling, who scanned them quickly with obvious relief. "Emergency A&P with inspection authorization," Sterling announced, unable to hide his satisfaction. "She's completely authorized to perform and sign off on the repair work." Thompson stepped forward desperately, playing his final card. "Sir, regardless of her newfound certification status, I still maintain that this repair represents an unacceptable risk to aircraft integrity." "What specific risk?" Blackstone's voice cut like a precision blade. "The aircraft has been thoroughly tested. The repair functions perfectly. My critical meetings in London are in 16 hours, and I've already lost millions in postponed deals because of this ongoing situation. The long-term structural implications. Dr. Thompson, Lisa interrupted quietly but firmly, when's the last time you actually worked hands-on with an aircraft? Not supervised from a distance, not consulted on paperwork, actually turned wrenches and solved real problems? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Thompson's mouth opened and closed without producing sound. Because I spent 12 years keeping aircraft operational under conditions that would make your worst day in this climate-controlled hangar seem like a luxury vacation. And in all that time, I learned one fundamental truth. Aircraft don't care about your credentials or your theories. They care about whether you can actually fix them. Blackstone studied Lisa with renewed interest and respect. And you're completely confident this repair will hold until you can source and install the proper replacement component? Absolutely, sir. I guarantee it with everything I have. With what exactly? Thompson sputtered desperately. What could you possibly offer as collateral for a $70 million aircraft? Lisa met his gaze steadily, her voice calm but unwavering. Everything I own. My house, my business, my future earnings. I'm putting it all on the line because I know this repair is structurally sound and will perform as promised. The hangar fell silent again. Even Thompson seemed stunned by the magnitude of her personal commitment. Blackstone walked over to examine Lisa's work firsthand, running his fingers along the precision bypass system she'd fabricated. Elegant engineering, he said finally, with genuine admiration. Innovative, actually. Why didn't our team think of this approach? Because they were searching for complicated solutions to a fundamentally simple problem, Lisa replied. Sometimes the most effective solution is also the most straightforward one. Blackstone straightened and turned to face the assembled group with decision. Prepare the aircraft for immediate departure. We leave for London in 3 hours. As the crowd began to disperse and preparations commenced, Danny approached Lisa with a broad grin. That was absolutely beautiful. Did you see Thompson's face when you asked about his hands-on experience? But Lisa wasn't celebrating yet. She'd won this particular battle. But something in Thompson's expression as he'd retreated suggested the war was far from over. And she had a strong feeling his next move would be more personal and more dangerous than regulatory obstacles. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Enjoy this moment while it lasts. It won't last long. Lisa deleted the message immediately, but couldn't shake the growing feeling that her real troubles were just beginning. Chapter 5. The tables turn. 4 days after the Boeing's successful flight to London, Lisa was back in her garage workshop when her phone rang with an urgent call. The caller ID showed Phoenix Sky Harbor executive, but the voice wasn't Sterling's. Ms. Rodriguez? This is Patricia Johnson from Airport Security. We need you to come in immediately regarding serious allegations of sabotage. Lisa's blood ran cold. Sabotage? What are you talking about? Please report to the security office immediately. We have some urgent questions about your work on Mr. Blackstone's aircraft. The drive to the airport felt like traveling through thick fog. Lisa's mind raced through terrifying possibilities, each scenario worse than the last. Had something catastrophic happened to the Boeing? Had her repair failed with deadly consequences? At the security office, she found herself facing not just Patricia Johnson, but 2 FAA investigators and, to her shock, Dr. Thompson. His expression was carefully neutral, but Lisa caught a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes that made her stomach turn. Ms. Rodriguez, said the lead investigator, Agent Sarah Foster. We've received serious allegations that you may have deliberately caused the electrical problem you later discovered in Mr. Blackstone's aircraft. The accusation hit Lisa like a physical assault. That's absolutely ridiculous. Why would I possibly do that? Financial desperation, Thompson interjected smoothly, his voice dripping with false concern. You were clearly struggling economically, facing foreclosure. Create a problem, then position yourself as the only person capable of solving it. It's actually quite clever, in a criminal sort of way. Agent Foster spread detailed photographs across the table, high-resolution images of the junction damage Lisa had discovered. Dr. Thompson has identified some irregularities in the fracture pattern. The damage appears more consistent with deliberate scoring rather than natural stress failure. Lisa studied the photographs carefully, her analytical mind working frantically. The crack she'd found was absolutely real. She was certain of it. But viewing the images through hostile, suspicious eyes, she could see how someone might interpret the clean edges and precise location as potentially suspicious. I didn't cause that damage, she said firmly, meeting each gaze in turn. I found it and repaired it. That's the truth. Then how do you explain having the exact materials needed for such a specific repair? Thompson pressed aggressively. The bypass system you fabricated was remarkably well suited to addressing the problem, almost as if you'd planned for exactly that type of failure. Lisa felt the walls closing in around her. Her military training had taught her to maintain multiple solutions ready for common problems. Of course, she'd had materials that could address electrical junction failures, but explaining that tactical preparation now made her sound guilty of premeditation. I want to contact a lawyer, she said quietly, but firmly. Agent Foster nodded professionally. That's absolutely your right, but understand, Ms. Rodriguez, that we're dealing with federal aviation crimes here. If these allegations are substantiated, you're looking at serious prison time. As Lisa was escorted to a private room to make her call, she caught sight of Sterling in the hallway. His expression was pained. Clearly, he didn't believe the accusations, but his hands were tied by the federal investigation. But there was someone else she noticed. Danny Martinez, the young veteran technician who'd supported her during the repair. He was speaking quietly with Agent Foster, and from his body language, Lisa got the strong impression he wasn't just there as a witness. Her lawyer, a public defender named Robert Garcia, who specialized in aviation cases, arrived within 2 hours. As he reviewed the allegations and evidence, his expression grew increasingly concerned. This is extremely serious, Lisa. Sabotage of commercial aircraft is a federal crime with mandatory minimum sentences. But something about this entire situation doesn't add up logically. What do you mean? Garcia tapped the photographs thoughtfully. The timing makes no sense. If you were planning to sabotage an aircraft for financial gain, why wait until you were financially desperate? Why not execute the plan when you had more resources to handle the inevitable investigation? As they talked, Lisa began to piece together what was really happening. Thompson's questions had been too specific, too well prepared. In advance, the evidence seemed too perfectly arranged. This wasn't about justice or aircraft safety. It was about destroying her credibility and, by extension, discrediting the dangerous idea that non-traditional mechanics could compete with established engineering firms. There's something else, Garcia said, consulting his detailed notes. The young technician, Danny Martinez, apparently came forward with additional information about the timeline. He's claiming he observed you near the aircraft before the official repair call. Lisa's heart sank. Danny, the one person she'd thought understood her situation, had apparently turned against her. But as Garcia continued reading, his expression shifted dramatically. Wait, that's not correct. According to his detailed statement, he did see you, but he also observed someone else. Someone who had unauthorized access to the aircraft the night before the problem was first reported. Lisa leaned forward intently. Who? Dr. Marcus Thompson. Apparently, Martinez works security shifts to supplement his technician income. He has access to comprehensive overnight surveillance footage. For the first time since this nightmare began, Lisa felt a spark of genuine hope. If Danny had evidence that Thompson was near the aircraft before the problem appeared, then maybe, just maybe, she could prove who had really sabotaged the Boeing. But first, she had to survive the investigation, and with federal charges hanging over her head like a sword, survival was far from guaranteed. Chapter 6. The Truth Emerges. The conference room at Phoenix Sky Harbor Executive had been transformed into an impromptu hearing room. Agent Foster sat at one end of the long table, flanked by FAA officials and airport security personnel. Lisa sat with her lawyer, Robert Garcia, while across from them Dr. Thompson occupied his chair with the confident demeanor of someone certain of victory. Before we proceed with formal charges, Agent Foster announced, we want to review all available evidence one final time. Mr. Martinez, you requested to make an additional statement? Danny Martinez stood up slowly, a tablet computer in his hands and a determined expression on his face. Lisa noticed his hands trembling slightly. Whatever he was about to reveal was clearly costing him considerable courage. Yes, ma'am. I've been working double shifts here, technician during the day, security patrol at night. I review surveillance footage as part of my standard rounds. He glanced directly at Dr. Thompson, whose confident expression was beginning to crack noticeably. 4 nights before Ms. Rodriguez was called in for emergency repairs, I observed Dr. Thompson accessing Hangar 12 at 2:23 a.m. The room fell completely silent. Thompson's face flushed deep red. I was conducting routine safety inspections, perfectly legitimate and authorized. With a full toolkit and electronic equipment, Danny continued steadily, because the footage clearly shows you carrying what appears to be sophisticated diagnostic equipment and precision tools. You remained in the hangar for approximately 52 minutes. Agent Foster leaned forward with intense interest. Do you have this footage available? Danny nodded, connecting his tablet to the room's large display screen. The security video was somewhat grainy but clear enough to show a figure matching Thompson's distinctive build and height entering the hangar in the early morning hours, carrying what was unmistakably professional equipment. This proves absolutely nothing, Thompson blustered, his composure beginning to crack. I regularly inspect aircraft systems. It's an integral part of my responsibilities. At 2:30 a.m., Garcia interjected sharply, without logging the inspection or informing management of your activities. But Danny wasn't finished with his revelations. There's more important evidence. Ms. Rodriguez, you mentioned that the crack was hairline thin, barely visible even with high-powered magnification. That's absolutely correct. But Dr. Thompson, in your initial report claiming the damage was suspicious, you described it as precision scoring with clean, deliberate edges. How could you make such a detailed assessment of damage that was supposedly barely visible to the naked eye? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Thompson's mouth opened and closed without producing any sound. Agent Foster studied the comprehensive timeline Danny had prepared. Dr. Thompson, you're claiming the damage was present when Ms. Rodriguez arrived, but you demonstrated detailed knowledge of its specific characteristics before any formal investigation began. Can you explain that discrepancy? The photographs clearly demonstrate. Thompson fumbled desperately for words. The photographs were taken after Ms. Rodriguez's repair was removed for evidence collection, Garcia pointed out methodically. You described the precision scoring in your initial complaint before any detailed photography was conducted. Lisa watched Thompson's carefully constructed facade crumbling in real time. The man who had seemed so confident in his accusations was now sweating profusely under the weight of his own contradictions. "There's one final piece of evidence," Danny said quietly, but firmly. "The electronic access logs for Hangar Security. Dr. Thompson's keycard was used to enter Hangar 12 19 times in the 3 weeks before the Boeing's problem was first reported. Most of those entries were after hours, with no logged maintenance activities or official explanations. Agent Foster made rapid notes. "Dr. Thompson, can you account for these unauthorized after-hours visits? This is nothing but harassment," Thompson snapped, his professional composure finally breaking completely. "You're taking the word of some night shift security guard over a credentialed engineer with 15 years of experience and advanced degrees. Some security guard." Danny's voice hardened with controlled anger. "I'm a combat veteran, just like Ms. Rodriguez. I spent 8 years maintaining fighter jets in Iraq and Afghanistan. I know sabotage when I see it, and I know integrity when I see it too." The room erupted as Thompson lunged toward Danny, his professional mask completely stripped away. "You people need to learn your proper place. I've worked my entire career to reach this level, and I won't have it undermined by some diversity hiring program." Airport security quickly restrained Thompson as Agent Foster called for order. In his rage, he'd revealed what Lisa had suspected all along. This wasn't about aviation safety or proper procedures. It was about maintaining a system that kept the right people in power and everyone else permanently excluded. "Dr. Marcus Thompson," Agent Foster said coldly, "you're under arrest for sabotage of commercial aircraft, filing false federal reports, and attempted obstruction of justice." As Thompson was led away in handcuffs, still protesting his innocence and ranting about unqualified personnel, Lisa felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she hadn't even realized she'd been carrying for months. Sterling approached her as the room cleared slowly. "Lisa, I owe you a profound apology. I should have trusted my instincts about your work instead of letting Thompson's credentials intimidate me into doubt." "You were protecting the company," Lisa replied generously. "I completely understand." "No, you don't understand." Sterling's voice was firm with conviction. "Mr. Blackston wants to meet with you personally. He has a significant proposition." Chapter 7. The Confrontation. Alexander Blackston's office occupied the entire top floor of a gleaming glass tower in downtown Phoenix, with breathtaking panoramic views of the desert mountains stretching to the horizon. Lisa had expected overwhelming opulence, but the space was surprisingly functional, more like an advanced engineering workshop than a traditional boardroom, with aircraft components and cutting-edge prototypes scattered across multiple work surfaces. Ms. Rodriguez, Blackston rose from behind a desk that looked like it had been salvaged from a military airfield command center. "Thank you for coming. Please have a seat." Lisa settled into the offered chair, still processing the dramatic events of the past week. Thompson's arrest had made national news, and her phone hadn't stopped ringing, with interview requests, job offers, and media inquiries. "I've been thinking extensively about what happened," Blackston continued thoughtfully. "Thompson's sabotage, your innovative repair, the investigation and revelation. It's exposed some deeply troubling patterns in how we evaluate and utilize talent in this industry." He walked to a wall display showing organizational charts for various major aviation companies. "Look carefully at these leadership structures. MIT, Stanford, Caltech, Princeton, all excellent institutions producing capable engineers. But notice what's systematically missing." Lisa studied the charts carefully. The pattern became obvious once pointed out, a remarkably homogeneous collection of similar educational backgrounds, similar thinking patterns, similar blind spots and limitations, real-world practical experience, she said, with growing understanding. "Exactly right. We've created an industry that systematically values credentials over actual competence, theoretical knowledge over practical problem-solving ability. And it's made us dangerously vulnerable to exactly the kind of issue you solved, straightforward, real-world problems that require intuitive understanding, not just academic theory. Blackstone returned to his desk, retrieving a thick folder filled with documents. I'm launching a new division, Advanced Problem Solving in Aviation Engineering. I want you to head it. Lisa blinked in astonishment. I'm sorry, what? You'd be responsible for tackling the aircraft problems that consistently stump traditional engineering approaches. You'd also develop comprehensive training programs that combine rigorous academic knowledge with hands-on practical experience. The kind that could prevent another Thompson situation from occurring. The offer was staggering. Not just the salary, which exceeded anything Lisa had ever imagined earning, but the unprecedented opportunity to reshape how the entire industry approached maintenance and problem-solving challenges. There's one important condition, Blackstone added with a slight smile. This division would prioritize hiring veterans and other non-traditional candidates, people with real-world experience who've been systematically overlooked by conventional hiring practices. Lisa felt tears threatening to overflow. After months of rejection and crushing financial desperation, after being dismissed and actively sabotaged, she was being offered the chance to not just rebuild her own shattered life, but to open doors for countless others facing identical struggles.
Why? She asked softly. Why take this kind of risk? Blackstone's smile broadened. Because Thompson's sabotage cost me over $3 million in missed opportunities, and 4 engineering teams couldn't solve what you fixed in 3 hours.
That's not ideology or charity, that's simple mathematics and sound business strategy. He stood and extended his hand with genuine respect. So, do we have a deal? But before Lisa could respond, her phone buzzed urgently with a text from Danny. Turn on the news immediately. Thompson is giving interviews. On the office's large television screen, a reporter stood outside the federal courthouse where Dr. Marcus Thompson, recently released on bail, was conducting an impromptu press conference. His face was haggard, his usually polished appearance replaced by the desperate look of a man whose carefully constructed world was collapsing around him. I maintain my complete innocence of all charges, he was declaring to the gathered media. This entire situation is a manufactured crisis designed to promote unqualified individuals at the expense of properly trained professionals with legitimate credentials. The aviation industry has rigorous safety standards for excellent reasons, and we ignore them at our collective peril. A reporter shouted a pointed question. Dr. Thompson, surveillance footage clearly shows you accessing the hangar where the aircraft was damaged. How do you explain that? Routine safety inspections. I was simply doing my job, ensuring aircraft safety and regulatory compliance. Now I'm being persecuted because I refuse to rubber stamp substandard repairs by unqualified personnel who lack proper educational foundations. Lisa watched in fascination as Thompson dug his hole deeper with every desperate word. His lawyer was visible in the background, frantically trying to get him to stop talking, but Thompson was clearly beyond rational thought or legal strategy. The real crime here, he continued with increasing agitation, is the systematic replacement of qualified engineers with diversity hires and military personnel who fundamentally lack the educational foundation necessary for complex commercial aviation work.
Jesus, Blackstone muttered, turning off the television with obvious disgust. His attorney must be having a complete breakdown. Lisa stared at the blank screen, thinking about all the veterans she'd known who'd struggled desperately to find meaningful
work after their military service. Good people with invaluable skills who'd been systematically dismissed because their hard-earned experience didn't fit neat academic categories. Mr. Blackstone, she said slowly, her voice growing stronger with conviction, I accept your offer, But I want to add one additional condition. What's that? When this story inevitably goes public, and it will go viral, I want to ensure the message is crystal clear. This isn't about replacing qualified people with unqualified ones. It's about dramatically expanding our definition of what actually qualifies someone to excel in this field. Blackstone nodded approvingly. I couldn't agree more completely. As Lisa signed the contract that would fundamentally change her life, she thought about Mike and the dreams they'd shared about her finding a place where her skills were truly valued and respected. She thought about Danny Martinez and his courage in speaking truth to entrenched power. And she thought about all the other veterans still struggling to find their rightful place in civilian life. Dr. Thompson had tried to destroy her career to protect his narrow, exclusionary view of who belonged
in aviation.
Instead, he'd inadvertently opened a door that could never be closed again. Chapter 8. Full Circle. 8 months later, Lisa stood in the gleaming lobby of the newly opened Veterans Aviation Excellence Center, watching as 31 former military mechanics filed into their first day of comprehensive civilian certification classes. The state-of-the-art facility, funded by Blackstone Industries and partnered with 5 major airlines, represented everything she'd hoped to achieve and more. Nervous about the opening, Danny Martinez approached wearing the crisp uniform of the center's assistant director of training. His promotion from security guard to senior management had been one of Lisa's first and most satisfying personnel decisions. Excited beyond words, Lisa corrected, straightening her own uniform. Director of Advanced Problem Solving, Veterans Aviation Excellence Center. The title still felt surreal after so many months of struggle. These 31 represent just the beginning of something transformational. Through the lobby's floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see the hangar where her incredible journey had started. The same Boeing business jet sat there now, fully restored with proper replacement components, serving as both a sophisticated training aircraft and a powerful symbol of what became possible when talent was recognized, regardless of its unconventional source. Sterling emerged from the administrative offices, tablet computer in hand as always, but his demeanor toward Lisa had transformed completely from skepticism to genuine respect. The latest placement statistics just came in, he announced, with obvious satisfaction. Our graduate placement rate is 96%. Average starting salary is 42% higher than traditional entry-level positions in the field. The statistics represented far more than mere career success. They were lives fundamentally changed, families economically stabilized, human potential finally realized after years of systematic dismissal and exclusion. Any updates on the Thompson trial? Danny asked with curiosity. Sentencing happened yesterday, Sterling replied, consulting his device. Federal prosecutors got 22 months plus full restitution payments. His engineering firm terminated him immediately after the investigation went public, and he's been permanently barred from FAA certification work. Lisa felt no satisfaction in Thompson's professional destruction. His actions had been despicable and criminal, but she understood the deep fear that had driven them, the terror of being replaced, of discovering that carefully accumulated credentials might not be as valuable as he'd believed. The crucial difference was that she'd channeled her own fears and struggles into helping others succeed, while he'd chosen the path of sabotage and destruction. There's something else significant, Sterling continued, with barely contained excitement.
Alexander wants to see you in conference room A immediately. He says it's critically important. Lisa found Blackstone waiting with a woman she didn't recognize, mid-50s, sharp-eyed, wearing a military dress uniform with enough ribbons and
decorations to indicate serious rank and extensive experience. Lisa, I'd like you to meet General Patricia Washington, Director of Military Transition Services for the Department of Defense. General Washington stood and offered a firm handshake that conveyed both strength and respect. Ms. Rodriguez, I've been following your groundbreaking work here with tremendous interest. The Pentagon is currently facing a serious strategic challenge. We're losing exceptionally talented people who can't find appropriate civilian employment opportunities after their military service. Your innovative model here could be the comprehensive solution we desperately need. Lisa felt familiar butterflies of nervousness. What kind of solution specifically? Nationwide expansion, Blackstone interjected, his eyes bright with entrepreneurial enthusiasm. The Department of Defense wants to fund similar centers in 18 major metropolitan areas. They're offering a partnership that would make this program available to veterans across the entire country. The magnitude of the proposal hit Lisa like a tidal wave. From desperately seeking any work to pay her bills and avoid foreclosure, she was now being offered the unprecedented opportunity to reshape veteran employment across the entire United States. The challenge, General Washington continued seriously, is that they want you to personally oversee the entire national program. It would mean extensive travel, congressional testimony, working directly with corporate partners and senior military leadership. Are you prepared for that level of responsibility and public scrutiny? Lisa thought about the phone calls she still received weekly, veterans who'd heard her story and were seeking guidance and hope, employers who wanted to understand how to better evaluate non-traditional candidates, families profoundly grateful that their loved ones had found meaningful, well-paying work that utilized their skills. General, 8 months ago I was about to lose my house because I couldn't find anyone willing to hire a veteran without a college degree. If this program can prevent other military families from enduring that same struggle and desperation, then absolutely I'm prepared for whatever it takes. General Washington smiled with genuine warmth. I was hoping you'd say exactly that. There's one additional component. We want to establish the Lisa Rodriguez Fellowship for Veteran Aviation Professionals, a full scholarship program for former military personnel pursuing civilian aviation careers with guaranteed job placement upon successful completion. Lisa felt tears threatening to overwhelm her composure. Having a national fellowship program named after her seemed impossible. She was just a mechanic who'd gotten extraordinarily lucky, who'd found the right crack in the right component at exactly the right moment. It's not luck, Blackstone said, as if reading her thoughts perfectly. You identified what others missed because you combined technical knowledge with intuitive understanding, developed through real-world experience. You stood firm under pressure because you knew your worth even when others refused to recognize it, and you used your success to lift others up instead of just enriching yourself. That's not luck. That's character and leadership. The ceremony that afternoon was attended by local and national news crews, veteran organizations, and aviation industry leaders from across the country. Lisa found herself at a podium, looking out at an audience that included her mother. Finally, healthy and beaming with pride, and dozens of her program graduates in their crisp professional uniforms. 10 months ago, she began, her voice steady and confident, I was a struggling veteran who couldn't get anyone to take my military experience seriously. I thought my service record was a liability in the civilian world. I was completely wrong. She paused, spotting Danny in the audience, now wearing the uniform of a senior instructor and preparing to lead his own advanced training classes. Military service isn't a liability, it's a strategic asset that civilian employers are finally learning to value properly. But this transformation didn't happen because someone in power decided to be charitable. It happened because we proved our worth, one successful repair at a time, one solved problem at a time, one changed life at a time. In the back of the room, she noticed representatives from several major aviation companies who had sent teams to observe and learn. Word was spreading rapidly that veteran hires weren't charity cases. They were competitive advantages that forward-thinking companies couldn't afford to ignore. The most important part of this story isn't that one veteran found success against the odds. It's that we've created a proven pathway for thousands more to follow. We've fundamentally changed how an entire industry thinks about talent, qualifications, and human potential. As the ceremony concluded and attendees mingled in the reception area, Lisa stepped outside for a moment of quiet reflection. The desert, sunset, painted the mountains in brilliant oranges and purples, the same colors she'd seen during countless evenings deployed overseas when she'd dreamed of coming home to meaningful work that valued her skills. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Ms. Rodriguez, I'm an Air Force veteran struggling to find civilian work in aviation maintenance. I heard about your program on the news. Is there hope for someone like me?" Lisa smiled as she typed her response. "There's always hope. Send me your information and let's discuss getting you certified and employed." As she headed back inside to rejoin the celebration, Lisa reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought her to this moment. A desperate repair job had become a catalyst for industry-wide transformation. A moment of financial crisis had evolved into a mission of empowerment that would affect thousands of lives. Dr. Thompson had tried to sabotage her career to protect his narrow, exclusionary vision of who belonged in aviation. Instead, he'd inadvertently launched a movement that was opening doors for qualified veterans across the entire country. Lisa Rodriguez had started as a struggling veteran mechanic who could barely afford groceries. She was ending as a national advocate for military talent, with the resources and platform to change lives on a massive scale that would reverberate for generations. The hairline crack that had stumped 4 engineering teams had done more than ground a luxury aircraft. It had cracked open an entire industry's entrenched assumptions about merit, qualifications, and opportunity. And for Lisa, that was the most elegant and lasting repair of all. This story was inspired by the countless veterans who possess incredible skills and experience, but face systematic barriers in transitioning to civilian careers. While the specific events are fictional, the challenges faced by military personnel seeking civilian employment are painfully real, as are the innovative programs working tirelessly to bridge that critical gap. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Everyday Life Stories community. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world.